Hi everyone, it's Vicky here and welcome to my first post as a guest designer for the Design Memory Craft line by Faber-Castell. Today I'll be making an art journal layout featuring gelatos, big brush markers and many textural accents. So let's start. I'm working on a sketchbook by Moleskine, but you can pretty much do the same on a canvas or any other art journal that you are working on. So first of all, I'm going to stick a tissue paper on top of my layout, and I'm using gel medium by Faber-Castell. I'm just applying a thin layer on top of both of my pages, and then I'll stick the tissue paper on top. If you're watching on YouTube, just to let you know that you can find a full list of supplies just below the video in the details area. If you are a beginner at art journaling, then applying a tissue paper at the bottom will give you a great start and will create a background for your art that is easy and quick. I just used my heat gun there just to make sure that everything is dry, and now I'm using my scissors and I'll go all around my moleskin just to make sure that I cut out everything that sticks out. And now that I'm done with the base of my layout, it's time to start the fun. This is gesso by Faber-Castell, and I'm applying a very thin layer on top of both of the pages. You will even see me dipping the brush in the water. That's what I'm doing here, just to thin the gesso even more. I'm not trying to cover up my background, I'm just trying to fade it out and push it more at the background. And once I've covered both of the pages, I'm using again my heat gun to make sure that everything is dry. You don't have to do that step with a heat gun, I'm just very impatient and I just can't wait for things to dry. And now the fun part begins. These are gelatos by Faber-Castell, and they are a great way to create easy backgrounds. I'm going to use these two shades of green and two different shades of blue. And as I'm working with them throughout the video, you'll be able to see the name of the gelato that I'm using at the bottom of the screen. I'm starting with this double scoop gelato. This is from the new release, they are bigger and better, and I'm just applying at the top of my layout to create my sky. You can always blend gelatos using your finger. You will end up with a deeper, darker and more saturated color, or just use a baby wipe, or as I'm doing here, which will apply the gelatos easily. And you'll end up with a transparent and lighter color. It depends on what you want to do. And at the bottom I'm using two shades of green to create my ground. And now that I'm done with gelatos, I'm using again gel medium by Faber-Castell, and I'll go over both of the pages to seal down the gelatos. And here is a tip. If you're trying to seal down gelatos using gel medium, make sure that you are using a dry brush, like I'm doing here, and just dip it on gel medium and never on water. If you use water, it will react with the gelatos and they will run. And now let's add some texture. This is wiped spackle by Faber-Castell. It acts exactly like modeling paste. And I'm using a stencil here that has some clouds, and I'm working on my sky. Notice that I'm working with the back of my spatula to apply the paste, and a little goes a long way when it comes to this paste. So I've just created a couple of clouds, and now I'm moving on to the second page to create another set of clouds there. And now that I'm done with the clouds, take a look how easy it is to clean the stencil. Just use your spatula and put back whatever sticks out so you don't have any waste. And now with a baby wipe, just clean up the stencil. As good as new. I'll try to catch the light for you here so you can see how much texture the wipe spackle adds to my layout. And now let's do some stamping. I'm using big brush markers on these penny black stamps. You can see the color name at the bottom of the screen of the marker that I'm using, and I'm just applying ink on top of my stamp. I'll just go ahead and spray just a bit on the stamp and now just stamp there on my layout. I'm going to do that with lots of stamps, like these flowers, which I'm stamping them using the black big brush marker. And as you can see, I've stamped others with a brown marker and others with a black one. There is a reason for that. The ones that I've stamped with black are going to be my focal point later on, while the ones on brown will be at the back. If I see something that wasn't stamped perfectly, I'll just go over it with my fine tip marker. And I have a gap there in the middle, so I'll go on and stamp another flower. Keep in mind that I'm working on a non-porous surface just because I've applied gel medium all over my page. That means that I have a few seconds to work with the color or wipe it off if I want to, like I'm doing here, before the Indian ink will dry out. Once it's dry, it will dry permanent. So I'm using my heat gun here just to make sure that everything is dry, and I'll go on and use my gelatos to color the leaves and the flowers. I'll be using various colors from my Gelatos color gift set, and you'll see me using 2 shades of each color for every flower or every leaf. As you can see, I have a stencil for that stamp there for the flowers. That's a great way to stay in lines if you want to use gelatos on small areas. Now you'll see that later on I'll remove the stencil since I was too lazy to do that, and I decided just to go ahead and color all the flowers without the stencil. And you can see that I'm working with a tool here. This is a tool from the Gelatos Tool Set, which is great for blending in smaller areas where your finger cannot do the job. Now for the leaves I have to go with a stencil since they are such a small area. I'm using 2 shades of green for the leaves, and at first the gelatos won't go through the stencil. Just apply their color on top of the stencil, and then by blending it with your finger they'll find their way to the paper. After finishing my coloring with gelatos, I went outside the house and sprayed the whole project with fixative. And now that the gelatos are sealed, I can go over them with my big brush pen and just color the stems and add some shading on the leaves. I'm also using my big brush pens to add some shading at the edges of my page. These are chipboard letters by Maya Road, and I'm just applying some adhesive on my craft sheet there. And now I'll go ahead and use my Chalkboard Paint by Faber-Castell and paint all the letters black. I also make sure to apply paint on the edges of the letters. If you notice on my layout, you'll see that I've stamped some leaves for the background, but I don't quite like them as they are standing too much at the moment, so I want to push them back on the background. What I would normally do is use gesso, but since this is a very complicated image with all the flowers in the foreground, it would mess up things. So I'll go ahead and use my big brush white marker and go all over those leaves. This will push them back on the background even more. I also use my white marker to add some highlights on the flowers. Remember that since I'm working on a non-porous surface, I have a few seconds before the ink dries out permanent and I can smudge the white highlights. Now before I go ahead and glue my letters on top of the layout, I'll use my white pastel pen and go all over the edges on those letters. Remember that I've painted the letters with chalkboard paint. The white pastel writes perfectly on top of it. It looks like chalkboard and it will add a great effect on my layout. These are black alphabet stickers by 7 Gypsies, and I'm writing the word hello on the bottom of the cloud there. And then I'll go ahead and use my liquid glue and stick all the letters on the pages. And now my project is almost ready. To finish it off, I'll use my spatula and gesso and go all over the edges to apply just a bit of white to frame it. And just because you can never have enough splashes on your project, I'm using gesso with water and add some splashes here and there. And just to remind you that all the supplies are listed just below the video. And that was my project for today. I hope you had fun and got inspired. Thanks for watching.